Welcome to the Sexy Freedom Media Podcast, a place to discuss pain, passion, and pursuits.
I want to feel alive.
Breathe.
Make some moves.
Protect the throne. This is Sexy Freedom Media Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Sexy Freedom Media Podcast. It's your host, Helen Edwards, and
January Liddell. Aloha, everyone.
yes, I'm so excited about today because we need some fun in our lives, and we are going to talk about the subject of our bloopers. We're going to share our personal bloopers of when we first, stepped foot into the entrepreneurship world.
All right. I actually like that. Entrepreneurial. Yes, because I have so many bloopers and things that I'd love to share. So I'm excited because we do need fun. And so this is going to be just a different experience than what we're used to. So let's go. Let's do this. So Helen, tell us about when you first started. What was your blooper? What was your first memory of your blooper?
Okay, so one of my very first bloopers I want to share is when I first started public speaking. So if you've read my book, Nothing Sexier Than Freedom, or if you know and follow my journey, I started my entrepreneurial career in public speaking. I had no training. I read no books on it, no courses, no schools, no nothing, no background. And all I did was read one book, and I think I read like a chapter or page in that chapter of Zig Ziglar and his one of his experience of giving back. So he talked about how if you want anything in life, you have to give it first. You want money, you give it. You want time, you give it. So basically what you put out in the universe or put out into the world, you're going to get back. So I was like, okay, I got this. I don't have money. I don't have this. I don't have that. I had all these like lack scarcity beliefs, but what I did have was time. I was like, okay, I'm going to offer my time and I'm going to create this business. By the way, I didn't even know anything about business. I just thought I'll create it out of thin air. Boom. It's called multiple achievers. That's what I called it. Multiple achievers. And I decided I'd go into the shelters and give back. So I'd give back, things that I read. So I read Think and Grow Rich. It's one of the very first books I read. And I just started practicing some things I learned. And a lot of it was about mindset. So I started practicing it in my own life and kind of being my own human experience about it. And I was like, okay, I'm going into the shelters and I'm going to teach them these concepts that I'm learning. So in order for me to get into the shelter and become a speaker and create these workshops, you have to go through, they're just not going to like let you in. They want to know your credentials. They're going to interview you. They're going to want to make sure you're qualified to go in and teach these programs. Again, no background. I'm like, oh my God, how do I do this? Oh, idea. I'll make it all up because technically, this is like what I do. I have talked in front of a crowd before, maybe like 5 people. So yes, I'm a public speaker. I do know how to create workshops and worksheets because I was doing admin work at the time and creating all of our worksheets for our clients. So boom, I basically qualified myself first. And then I went into, the interview, and I took a friend with me. And I remember they were just like, who are you? We dressed all nice. I mean, we were like, oh, we're boss woman. We got this. And I can't remember the exact question they asked me, but it was something along the lines of, what makes you qualified to do this? And I just felt so stumped. And I just stood there like, what do I say? Like, what's my background? My friend jumped in. She was like, Helen, oh my God, she's overqualified if you ask me. And she just starts going off and creating this resume for me that I never even heard of. And, and I felt like such a fraud and I felt like a liar, but at the time, I was like, I don't even care. Like, they're not paying me. I'm going in to help these people. Like, seriously, like, give me the spot. Well, that lie, that fraud, it worked. And I ended up getting my foot in the door, and I actually taught at the Phoenix shelters for 4 years.
Gosh, well, that was a blooper for sure. I can imagine your face, like, oh, what do I say? But you know what? You owned it. Owned it. So that is like, that's a fun blooper. I'm gonna tell you my blooper. Um, so this is, we're talking about entrepreneurship, right? So entrepreneurship, uh, I've been an entrepreneur pretty much all my life, okay? And the reason why I was an entrepreneur is because, well, there are certain things that I don't know if I'm ready to share that just yet. However, became an entrepreneur. And I own a video company business. And the way that people found me was through word of mouth, right? It was all word of mouth. And what I like to do is I create slideshows. I create slideshows for first birthdays, graduations, and weddings. Okay. Love weddings. Weddings are so fun. This one time, okay, so I was doing a first birthday for a client. First birthday for a client, and it's the same theme that I used for another client. Okay. So it's the same theme, but what I like to do is I put the heads, and I used Final Cut. Okay, so I used Final Cut, and you have to, it's a several process. You have to use Photoshop in order to get their heads and then shrink it down. You're using Final Cut to shrink it down to the exact, head of it was Teletubbies. Okay, so I used Teletubbies. I had to shrink it down. Okay, and mind you, this is the first birthday, so there's hundreds of people at this party. Okay, so I put the slideshow, I'm playing it, I'm like, yes, I'm confident, everything's going well. I have this amazing intro, and it's like this hip-hop beat. I'm like, all right, cool. And then every time I do my slideshow, it's a story. Okay, so I start off with like a trailer, and then after that it talks about like the couple, and how they met, and so stories about that. And then it segues to baby, or like maternity, and then baby, right? And then after the baby, then it's like introduction of the family, because there's more than just that baby, there's the family included, right? So this particular, and I call them bumpers. So I have bumpers in between the pictures, okay? And these bumpers basically are just fun little intros to the section. So this bumper was about Teletubbies. All right, so we're watching it. Everything's going really well. Teletubbies come on.
No!
And I was mortified because
Oh my
it
God.
wasn't my client's pictures. It was another client's pictures. So I was like, crap, what do I do? So we just watched the whole thing. There was no way for me to stop it. And I was like,
Oh my God. I would be embarrassed too.
oh, so that was one of my bloopers when I was an entrepreneur. And it was till this day, I'm like still mortified because there was no going back. It was like live show with like hundreds of people watching. And I'm like,
the things we do when we
blooper.
think we're like kind of cutting corners, we're like, I got this. Okay, so when I first became a yoga instructor, rewind, when I went to try to become one. So there was a program in Phoenix, and they were offering this become a yoga instructor by going to the yoga teacher training, right? And I remember getting the application, and I was like, ooh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to do something different, because I just needed to level up and I didn't know how. So I thought, yoga, I'm physically fit, that's all it takes. I was doing CrossFit at the time, but I had never done yoga before. So in the application, it says you have to have 1 year of yoga experience to do the yoga teacher training. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, can't be that hard. So I put that I had a year experience. I was like, yeah, I've been doing yoga for like a year. Well, let me tell you something. oh my God, I really got a spanking by the universe because I had ended up going to a workshop before I started the yoga teacher training. I was all signed up, all paid up, like, let's do this. But I go to this workshop and they have a yoga instructor there. And she ends up teaching us, some breathing techniques, just sitting still and doing breathing for like 30 minutes. It drove me freaking crazy. I was like, oh my God, if this is yoga, I'm done for. I can't even sit here, let alone keep breathing like crazy. What the heck? Like, I thought it was like yoga fitness, I had it completely wrong. So fast forward, I end up going to yoga teacher training. My first week, I was struggling so hard. My ego was fighting with me. My body was fighting with me. It was so much more intense. It was all about mind, body, spirit. My thought that it was only about physical fitness. No, hunty. It was about the mind, keeping it still, breathing techniques. I mean, spiritualness. It was so embodied with so many beautiful aspects to it. But I did get my very first huge injury doing yoga out of all things. I had tore, I can't even remember what it is now. I tore something in my chest. I tore a chest fiber. I ended up in the ER. I thought I was having a heart attack. Like, I didn't know what was wrong. And it's because I pushed myself without being mindful of my body into, an upward facing dog. And, this goes to show how my ego played a big part in my life back then, because I did not care. I wanted to outdo everybody in performance and physical performance. And I quickly got put in my place. Like, girl, first you lied again with the fraud, but let me tell you something. Back in my 20s, I did a lot of lying to get ahead because I was so desperate to change my life that I did not give a shit who knew what. Like, this was like, I will lie to get ahead. I actually didn't believe in integrity at that time. So if you can imagine Helen without integrity, wild as fuck, who cared, going for it, gets spanked a lot by the universe. So that's why I have many bloopers, and this is one of them.
Girl, I'm gonna tell you, part of being like an entrepreneur, you gotta fake it till you make it. So I totally understand what you were saying. I totally understand, because there's moments where you just gotta do what you gotta do, because we have to earn a living, right? So you gotta do what you gotta do. So I don't blame you one bit. And that Helen back then created the Helen that you are today. So you're good, girl. You're good. But there is this one video. Okay, so I just posted this probably last week, and the video was like an entrepreneur life, right? And it shows this one guy, and there's like these like floaty things on the water, yeah, and the guy has to like walk or like run through this thing without falling into the water. And entrepreneur life is just like this guy. This guy is like running, he stumbles, and he's running. And that's exactly what the entrepreneur life is. So here's another blooper for me. I don't know if it's a blooper, but it's definitely like, oh my gosh, why? 2 years ago, when I became we're going on 3 years actually. So 2021. So next year I'll be 3. So years ago, I invested in Postcard Mania. Okay, I invested in Postcard Mania, and I'm not downplaying them at all. Not downplaying them, because it probably works for other people. In my case, it just didn't work. But I spent oodles and oodles of money on this beautiful postcard that I don't even know if anybody saw. To be quite honest with you, they said they mailed it. That's like 1,000. Okay, so they mailed it to 1,000 people. Are you telling me out of that 1,000 people, no one contacted me? Zero. That was like, ooh, how much did I spend? Thousands of dollars. And I'm like, oh man, I got a beautiful postcard. So I spent thousands of dollars for a beautiful postcard. So that's definitely like a blooper. And a blooper is like, to me, it's like, I did what I did, but
yeah. Girl, I have so many of those where you've invested so much money, and it's so strange because back when I used to teach and do these workshops at the homeless shelters, So like I said, I did it for 4 years. The first 2 years was adults only. The last 2 years was families, so parents and children. And I can tell you, I spent a lot of money investing in myself to get there because it was a drive. I also left work early. I was always coming up with these excuses because I couldn't tell my boss, yeah, I'm going to go speak at the shelters because I'm trying to like make my speaking career that I'm not getting paid on, you know? Like, what are you doing, Helen? Why do you keep leaving work? Oh, I'm sick. I don't feel good. Like, I was constantly making excuses. And I was spending money in gas to get down there. And also after every speaking engagement that I did, I had this ritual I would do. I would go drinking with my friends to celebrate the fact that I touched somebody's life. You know, that's kind of how I recycled this excitement of doing it. So I had a really bad partying habit, and it was very expensive. Gas, you know. And then I was like hungover a lot, so I was spending money on like a lot of greasy foods and hangover kits. And then I was missing money from my checks because I didn't work a full, like, you know, the full time, because I was taking, and I was also investing money in buying a lot of Think and Grow Rich books because I'd raffle them off at every workshop. So this became like, am I making money? Like, what am I gaining? But I also had to take a hard look at my habits, and they were not that great at that time. But yeah, you're right. I was investing a lot and not getting anywhere. I was like, wait, how am I turning this into a career? Like, what am I doing?
But it's a story of like entrepreneurship, right? Because when you get into it, you're like, yes, like you're so excited and you're like, yes, I could do this. And then reality hits and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I do have to invest money in this and that and that and that. And then along the way, it's like you're faking it till you make it. And I think that's the one thing, like you and I, Helen, it's the same thing, same exact thing. It's like, I'm just gonna do it. Like, I don't know how to do it yet, but I'm just gonna say I'm gonna do it. And I'm like, whatever it takes, I'm just gonna fumble and fall. I remember this one time. Okay, so I was one of my first ever Zoom meetings with a lead. And girl, I was fumbling on my words. I was like, bleh, bleh. Oh, let me rewind. And then I would fumble on like my images that I'm going to show to people. And I'm like, wait, where is it? And it was a lot of fumbling. It's a lot of like I felt like I was slurring my words, and I felt like I was just like not in the right frame of mind, because I'm like, okay, I got this, but do I really got this? You know, but we had to go through. I had to go through all that mishaps. You had to go through all those mishaps to get to where you are now. And I love that you had like celebratory parties. That's awesome. That's awesome. I think my celebratory party was like, let me go get a chocolate cake. Let me go get some wine. You know, that was my celebratory. But you're right, habits make us.
Oh, they totally do. So actually, when I first started this podcast, I was inspired by Joe Rogan. I mean, who wasn't? I mean, there's a lot of us who were, but I knew nothing about podcasting. So 6 years ago, rewind, little Helen, you know, and I brought my one of my best friends, Danita, on with me. And because I wasn't going to do it by myself. Everybody's like, do it. And so I was like, all right, fine. So we did it together. And I remember we were at one of my friend's house, and he had this huge Bob Marley poster. And I was like, that has to be in our background, like Bob Marley, you know? So we put in the background and we film, you know, I had this little Chromebook. It was like super tiny. And it was piled on a bunch of books. I was like, yes, this works. You know, turn on all the lights, every light in the house. We need all the lights. So we start recording, and Bob Marley falls over. Boop. I'm just like, oh man, start over. So we put Bob Marley on because we're trying to get him just right, you know, talking again, and play. Bob Marley falls over again. I'm just like, oh my gosh, how do we get Bob Marley to stay in our frame? I'm telling you, I think we ended up doing it. If you might be able to see one of our old YouTube videos, but I believe he was cricket. That's how we basically were like, all right, you know what? We put it in our minds. You know what? That's cool. That's cool. Imperfection's cool. So we were like, yeah, imperfection is cool. So we convinced ourselves that that looked so cool. And I remember I was wearing this cap. I had a shirt with a kitty on him, a kitty on my shirt, but he was like a gangster kitty. And he had chains on, and I had like my hat backwards. I was like, yes, I got this.
That is so cute. That is so cute. Now I have to look through your YouTube files and find that video. I mean, yeah, you're right, because when we're an entrepreneur, it's like we got to do whatever, like position the books, position the stuff, and it's like it's all about imperfection. Everything is about imperfection. I think for us, Helen, just even doing this podcast, there are moments where like, what are we going to talk about? Yeah, okay, let's talk about that. Sure, okay, let's run with it. And we run with it, and it's like, yeah, we just go with the flow. I mean, even this one is like, we're going to talk about bloopers. All right, cool, let's go.
I remember when you first started, January, because the name of our podcast is Sexy Freedom Media Podcast, right? It's kind of long, but at the time when I first created it, I honestly didn't think anything of it. Like, I didn't think the name should be short. And I mean, we still could change it actually. But when you first started, January, you were like, you'd be like, welcome to Sexy Media, the Freedom. Welcome to Media Sexy. Welcome to Sexy Podcast. Like, I was just like,
I know. God, I could not say it for the life of me. It was just too like, it was like a mumbo jumbo in my mouth. And I'm like, what is it? It was so much fun. Yes, but you know what, Helen, even today when we got on, Helen and I got on today, and I turned on my video, and I'm like waiting for her, and she turned on her video, and here we are. We're like with our cables, and we're like unraveling stuff, and I'm like, and she was unraveling stuff. I'm like, what the heck? So we had a blooper this morning, actually.
I think that there's so many bloopers that people don't see. And if we recorded every single blooper, because for our audience, you want things nice and clean, you want things to look good and professional. But every podcaster I've talked to, every public speaker I've talked to, because I'm involved in a lot of groups, because I've done so much public speaking, author, I've written a book, so writers groups, yoga instructors, retreat leaders, because I've ran retreats, all of these financial groups. There's bloopers behind the scenes that our clients and audience don't see. But if they did, and you only see them on movies, right? I'm telling you, they're going to make a movie about my life, about nothing sexier than freedom. Because if people saw more bloopers, they'd go, oh my God, if they can do it, I can do it. Like, if they can be an entrepreneur, I can be an entrepreneur, because we're all going to mess up.
Yeah, I love that we're talking about this, because in order to get to where we are, and and we haven't arrived yet, so we haven't arrived, and we're constantly going to be doing bloopers and things that may not make sense, but it makes sense for us at that very moment. And these are the little milestones, or the little events that have created us to who we are today. And we're continuing to do bloopers, even like I said this morning, we did a blooper this morning. And there are behind the scenes things that people don't get a chance to see. And if only there was a highlight and a reel of all of our bloopers, then you would see like, oh my gosh, I would never suspect them to have that kind of blooper. But it's all about progress, not perfection, right? So that's my mantra: progress, not perfection. And on the way to our goal or our target, we're going to be experiencing all these things that whether we spend way too much money on something, and it didn't really yield us a return of investment, right? Whether it be like fumbling through like the background and things like falling apart, or like not getting the right things in place, and whether it be like, oh, we're running late, or whether it be like, oh my gosh, I overslept, let me jump on a Zoom call, because I know that's happened a couple times this week, and let me just put something on real quick. those are bloopers too, right? So all of these different things happen. But it's awesome, Helen, because it makes us human. We are
You just
human.
have to laugh. You've got to learn to laugh at yourself, because one of the things I've realized is how much fun I'm having on the entrepreneurship journey. I don't want to wait till I'm 65 to start laughing at myself. This whole thing is hilarious. It's hilarious. If you really sit back and you think about like how you started your day and what obstacles came about in your life and what challenges you have ahead of yourself, it's almost like, and I've mentioned this before, player one. You're like player one, right? And you're like, all right, I got this. What tools am I going to use today? Like, how am I going to win? How am I going to like get to the end and wave my flag? It's just, it's hilarious. You are your own avatar playing this fun game. Like, you should laugh at yourself, because it's actually quite comical if you look back, right? If you have that moment of reflection.
I love that. I love that you're saying, look, just think of it as player one, and you have all these different, tools that you're going to choose. And yeah, you got to laugh. That's just the story, right? A story of entrepreneurial life, and just the life in general. We all have bloopers. We're all going to fumble. Okay, this is not even entrepreneurial, but I'm just going to share it because it is a blooper for me in my life reel. Okay. It was fourth grade. And here I am. We're doing our social studies project, and I'm drawing and I'm doing whatever. And I remember I couldn't keep it in, but I just let one loose. I let one loose, and it was a big one, right? And my friend Kate, gosh, she was my friend, but my friend Kate, she was like, Jen, she like pointed at me, she's laughing at me, and I was like, huh? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, that was my chair.
Blame it on the chair.
I didn't own my fart. I should have been like, yep, that's right, I did fart. Now looking back, I'm like, yep, I did fart. That was me. Because guess what? That's a human anatomy. That's a human biology thing that has to happen. So yes, that was me. Thank you, Val.
So funny. Own your fart. I'm gonna tell my fiance that I bought him a pair of socks last week that said, I love to fart on the socks, and he's like, I'm not wearing those, you're wearing, that's you. And I'm like, oh my god. Anyways, so I'm gonna share one more blooper, because this blooper is continuous, and it's probably gonna be continuous in my life. Like I said, when they make a movie about my life, Nothing Sexier Than Freedom, I'm probably gonna be super embarrassed about it, because now, so I wrote it during my 20s and 30s, right? I want to say I was fearless in a different way, because I cussed a lot. Like I said, I partied a lot. Like I was like, I don't give a, I don't give a shit. I don't give a fuck. Like, in fact, when I first wrote the book, it had so many F-bombs. It was crazy. It took my final editor to say, maybe we should cut some of these out. And my mom was like, we probably can do without a lot of them. You can have like a bunch, but not like a gazillion. So now that I look back, because I'm writing Nothing Sexier Than Freedom 2, the sequel, it's going to be completely different. It's still going to be me, but a lot more, it's a more maturity me, more mature me, right? And you're reading the book, January. Like, it's dirty. It is filthy. It's raw. It's, I got a 3-star review. The woman loved it, but she said it was a little too raw for her. And although that didn't bother me, it really reminded me, your dirty shit is out there. Like if there's any of a blooper for an author, this is it. Like, do I regret writing a bunch of stuff? No. Am I a little embarrassed? Every now and then, if I get in my head about it, but mostly not. However, I am a little bit like, there's no going back. Like, my life is out there. Like, the bloopers, the sex scenes, everything's out there. People know what my nipples look like. Okay. So it's just like, if there's any a blooper, it's me like going, oh my God, it's out. All right. Time for sequel number 2. Like, I need to fix this. I need to set the record straight.
Girl, there's no going back. Bloopers happen, and there's no rewind. You know what I mean? There's no rewind. You just gotta go through it and own it. Just like I own my fart. I did it. That's it. And can't go back, you know. But you know what? I'm excited about sequel number 2. I do like number 1. And the reason why I like number 1, I'm surprised you got a 3-star. It should have been at least a 4, not a 3. Like what? Okay, so here's why. Because it was very raw. I think that's why I like it was honest. You were so like transparent about who you were and everything that has happened. So I actually am enjoying it because it does say everything. You just put everything on the table. You're like, here you go. And I think that was awesome. So keep doing it. Keep doing it. I'm excited for sequel number 2.
Yes. Yes. So on that note, we're gonna wrap it up, but we're gonna wrap it up with some shout outs. I believe
Yes!
Do you have January? Do you have any?
You know, I'm just gonna shout out some people. Personally, I didn't get a shout out. Honestly, I didn't post it, so I don't have the shout outs from my friends. But I am gonna shout out a couple of people that were pinnacle this week, and I don't think they're gonna be listening. I'm hoping somehow they find this podcast. But Ulysses, Bob, and Carrie, thank you so much for all that you've done. They're at the vet center and they were just really pinnacle in helping me this week and guiding me. So I am just giving them a shout out. I do want to shout out some other people though. Angelia, Michelle, Marissa, of course you, Helen. So I'm going to shout out my ladies of Extreme One. I am cheering you on. Kyla, Ashley, Roanne. So I just wanted to at least shout their names and say, I am thinking about you all. You guys are amazing. And that is my shout out. So what are your shout outs?
Awesome. I love those. And thank you for including me. I'm going to give a shout out to Sarah Bradford. She is actually a part of our Sexy, Successful, and Soul Fed group. She says she's having a autism support event on, it's actually a mix, on August 11th and August 12th. So you can contact her at sjchilds.org. She is also a podcaster, and her podcast is amazing, SJ Childs podcast. So again, you can contact her if you are interested in joining that mix or joining that event. It's supposed to be really great on autism awareness, which I love. And I love that because I that's big. It's a big part of my heart. I worked with kids with autism for quite a few years, and my nephew also is autistic, but he's amazing. All of these kids are amazing. So go out and support her show and her event. I do want to give a shout out to Megan Baker, who we talked to this morning. She actually listens to our podcast, and we got to speak with her and get some feedback on her. She's amazing. So she's a real estate agent over in the Phoenix area. So shout out to Megan. Also, one more, January, I want to give a shout out to you because you are so fantastic. And if you all don't know January, you need to follow her on VIP Finance Builders and Facebook VIP Finance Builders. January is not just an amazing woman. I've come to know her as one of my best friends. She is so into self-development, which I love. You're such an amazing mother to your kids and a wife to your husband. Just the little I've known about you has become a lot that I've known about you. But you support all the I always say X1, but it's the Extreme One financial team. You're so supportive with all of us, and you are so knowledgeable with money, with finances. You jump on all my calls, you jump on all of our meetings, and you go above and beyond to teach people about money. And that's why we all do what we do. We're trying to make money so that way we can invest that into the dreams that we want to live in real life. And January, you're golden. I just want to say thank you.
Oh my gosh, you caught me off guard. You caught me off guard because I was not expecting that. That was the sweetest thing. Thank you. I appreciate that. Helen, you know I have all of the amazing things to say about you because you're just phenomenal. I mean, your bravery, your boldness, like that. I want to grow up to be just like you. I really do. Marilee said that the other day, and I'm like, that's what I want to be. I
I
want to be
mean,
like Helen.
can you blame? I mean, I can't blame you girls. You know, just
You know Helen. We all love Helen because she started Sexy Freedom Media 6 years ago. 6 years ago. We're going into our seventh soon. Yeah, seventh
yes,
season.
actually, we would love for everybody to tune into next week, because next week is actually going to be our 6-year anniversary, and like January said, we're going into our 7th season. It's so exciting. So yes, I'll let you know where to find me, and then we'll go into January and wrap this up.
All right.
You can find me, Helen Edwards, on Hell of a Journey with 1L. On TikTok, Hell of a Journey 1. I don't know why I mentioned TikTok. I'm just on there. I have fun. You can get my book, Nothing Sexier Than Freedom. It's available on Audible and Amazon. And yes, go follow us on Sexy Freedom Media on our Facebook page. And please give us a review. If any of our episodes have touched you, please subscribe and share and support our podcast by buying us a coffee, which the link is in the show notes. So thank you.
And thank you to all our listeners. I do want to have another shout out. Sorry, Cal, because I know Cal listened to this. So thank you, Cal, for listening to us and leaving us a 5-star review. I appreciate you. We appreciate you. You can find me on LinkedIn, January Liddell, on Facebook and Instagram. It's VIP Finance Builders. Please find us and share and like this podcast because we just have so much love to give and so much knowledge and value that we'd like to share to others. And we hope that you're sharing this with your friends and your family as well, because this is a dialogue that we'd like to continue, not just here in our podcast, but if you can constantly share it with your friends and your family, then the dialogue continues. And all the topics that we talk about don't just stay within this little square box. It goes on to the world. And we just like to share our light. So please share, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. Aloha, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.
Bye.
Want to hear more?
Visit us at sexyfreedommedia.com.